All right, Holly's going to stick around for our Flags of Change segment, where we explore how powerful symbols are often born from the bold vision of just one individual. So, Holly, do you mind holding up your flag that you're going to talk about? Yeah, so this is a 3x5 flag, I think, just an American
3 foot
flag,
by 5 foot. Yep.
just like the ones we sell that you might hang on your house or have in your garage.
Yep.
And yet, this flag is one of the most extraordinary flags I've personally heard about. Holly, will you tell us its story?
I would love to. It was a sunny September afternoon, and I had everything prepared for when my 22-year-old son, Danny, would walk through the door. When he did, I almost didn't recognize him, but it's not because he looked different, but something had changed. He carried himself differently. It was like the way he glided when he walked. He stood taller, calmer, quieter. Danny was an EOD tech, which is explosive ordnance disposal or bomb squad to us civilians with the United States Air Force. That means that in his job, he would walk toward bombs that everyone else needed to run from. And that work changed him in a good way. Danny knew he was saving countless lives disarming IEDs. And I knew saving lives was really important to him. So as he walked toward me, he discreetly pulled out this flag and very quietly said, "This is for you, Mom." He didn't tell me anything about it. And I didn't ask because at that moment, all I was thinking about was the joy that my son was home, safe, whole, alive. I thanked him for the flag and I set it on the buffet right next to his picture. And then through tears of joy, wrapped my arms around him and we celebrated his homecoming from Iraq, his first deployment. The next, about a year later, he was deployed to Afghanistan. That time, he did not come home, safe, whole, or alive. There were no tears of joy, no celebration, no relief, just tears of profound grief and pain. And that flurry of booking flights to get the whole family to California to the Vandenberg Air Force Base for a military funeral. I don't remember much of that. I didn't do the booking. I had trouble breathing. And as we were rushing out the door, I stopped and I went to catch our flight. I went back in my house and I grabbed the flag that Danny had given me the year before, still on the buffet, still next to his picture. And I put it on my chest and I could breathe. Deep, slow breaths. I held this flag the entire way across the country. I don't know what anybody thought. Didn't matter. I needed it. In the chapel at Vandenberg, I sat in the front row and a handsome airman in crisp dress blues kneeled in front of me, handed me the customary folded American flag from a grateful nation. And then he handed me another one of these size flags, just like the one Danny had given me. And it was during the service that I found out the significance of these flags. When Danny was in Iraq and assigned to disarm a bomb, it was discovered that when he was putting on the bomb suit, he was strapping this flag to his chest. His good buddy, Technical Sergeant John Homer, pulled him aside. "Dude, for 1 ounce equals 1 pound. That was John's way of reminding Danny what all EOD bomb techs learn early in training, that for every extra ounce of gear they wear inside a bomb suit, their bodies will feel an additional pound worth of stress and weight that could cause pain. This is because those bomb suits are already extremely heavy. They weigh between 80 to 100 pounds. And they're very hot because they're lined with armor and software. They can get up to 120 degrees inside. So John did, and they can be smelly. I found that out because Danny had me try one on once so that I would get a sense of a day in the life of a bomb tech. So John did his research and he discovered that this 3 foot by 5 foot flag weighs 14 and a half ounces. And so he talked to Daniel about adding 14 and a half pounds of weight to his uniform and said, get a patch or a tattoo like so many have. And he pulled his shirt up and showed him. And Danny respectfully declined and said, I plan to continue to strap this over my heart on every mission I'm assigned. And when I return home, I'm going to give it to my mom. By the time Danny was deployed to Afghanistan, he was newly married and strapping 2 3 foot by 5 foot flags on, one in front of his heart and one behind, one for his mom and one for his wife. Not because he had to, because he chose to, because of the weight of the love he carried in his heart for his family and his country. It seems ironic that Danny wasn't killed disarming a bomb. He was not wearing the bomb suit. In fact, he was wearing shorts and a T-shirt in an area that had already been cleared when he stepped on a pressure plate for an IED that the combat engineers had missed. In his book, First to Fall, retired Air Force Captain Wayne G. Sales discusses how we name buildings, parks, highways, and bridges after heroes. But it's odd that most of us aren't familiar with those names and don't know what they did for them to become heroes. So therefore, we don't think of those heroes as having been real people who lived real lives and left behind real families like mine. Danny would be mortified if he knew how many things are named after him today. The one that resonates deepest in my heart is the main entrance and road leading into Vandenberg Air Force Base, now also known as Vandenberg Space Force Station. It was California Boulevard. It's now Senior Airman Daniel Johnson Boulevard. Just outside of Vandenberg in Santa Maria, where Danny lived, there's Dan Johnson Avenue. In Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, there's a park where Danny played as a 10-year-old boy that's now named Senior Airman Daniel J. Johnson Park. And just outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, there's a state-of-the-art indoor rock climbing facility that's named Senior Airman Daniel James Johnson Climbing Center. Danny was an avid rock climber, so much so that when he was in Iraq, he built a climbing wall and he trained to stay in shape climbing in that heavy, hot bomb suit I described to you. You've probably heard the old saying, every man dies twice. First, the last time they take their breath, and then again, the last time their name is spoken out loud. But my dear friend and mentor, author and playwright, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, a retired Green Beret, says he thinks there's a third death. And that's the last time we tell their stories. Names can fade, but stories stick in our hearts and our brains. Stories help our brains make sense of seemingly senseless events and eventually find meaning, and can eventually find meaning and purpose. In his book, The Things They Carried, Tim O'Brien says, stories are for joining the past to the future. Stories are for those late hours in the night when you can't remember how you got to where you are from where you were. Stories are for eternity, when memory is erased and there's nothing left but the story. And that's why I keep telling Danny's stories.
Thanks for listening to Freedom and Glory, Tales of American Spirit. If today's story moved you, share it with someone who'd appreciate it. Subscribe and leave a review. It helps others find us. And when you're ready for American-made flags and products built to last, visit freedomandglory.com. One flag, a million stories, yours included.